Welcome back to another Mackem in the Middle podcast and another reaction episode on the channel. It was another league game yesterday, second home game of the season. This time we were playing against a good side. I think they were unbeaten, 11 going into this game against AFC Wimbledon. We did win 1-0 thanks to a goal from, I want to say, Carl Winchester. Don't think it's going to go down as a Carl Winchester goal, but we'll give him it for the benefit of the doubt.
It goes down as a Winnie Yester goal instead.
A Winnie Yester goal instead.
Yep.
I mean, we could do that. But I'm joined by Michael, as you've just heard, and Kyle once again. And I said on Wednesday, Michael, after the Burton game, that, you know, we could take the positives out of that game, even though we lost it, but only if we went in on Saturday's game and put it right and, you know, came out winners, which we did.
Definitely. Well, I said in my own YouTube video, football is a really, really funny game. I think from what I've watched against Burton, that was our best performance, I think, in the league this season, and we end up losing 1-0. Yesterday, arguably for me, is the worst. Maybe not the worst, most disjointed in a lot of respects, and we end up winning 1-0. So shows what we know about football. Let's just accept whatever's thrown at us, I suppose. But yeah, there were aspects of definitely. I think with every home game, especially, I mean, we need to be winning most games in this league, but I think every home game, especially, will be an opportunity to pick up 3 points and minimise the pressure away from home. But you're right, though. I think the only way you could take positives out of the Burton game is if we responded with a victory here. And while we weren't great, we got the job done, and that's the bottom line, really.
Yeah. And obviously, there is still a long way to go, Kyle. 43 games in the league, to be precise. But I remember saying this last season. I can't actually remember if it was under Parkey or whether it was under Johnson, but we were winning games last season with luck going our way at certain times, and I think we've started this season in a similar way. Obviously, you go back to the Wigan game, we've got a penalty that ended up being the decisive goal against MK Dons. The keeper spilled it. That ended up being the decisive goal. And of course, yesterday in a 1-0 win, it was a deflected goal that, in all honesty, probably is going to go down as an own goal. And, you know, I don't want to sound too negative because at the end of the day, we're winning games and that's what gets you promoted. But we do need to start winning games because we've battered the opposition goal and taken our chances well, as opposed to relying on that piece of luck to get us through the game.
Right. And I think to an extent you do create your own luck. Like, I do think there were some things that were earned, especially in that second half. First half was pretty terrible. Definitely had me a little bit on edge. But yeah, second half we did come out. We were much more attacking minded. And we did create some good chances, and sometimes the luck does just come with it. I feel like we've had our share of rotten luck in the past, so it's nice to have some on the other end. But I 100% agree with you. We have to be more decisive. We shouldn't, if that was maybe our second or third goal after we had already scored, one or two well-worked goals that we easily could have yesterday. Sure, that's just kind of the icing on top. But I agree. I think we can't, especially at home, we have to be up 1 or 2 goals before we can really start to just kind of be happy with goals like that being the winner. But at the end of the day, it's 3 points. So it's like I said, we worked hard. I think we earned our luck a little bit. But I agree. Moving forward, let's be a little bit more decisive.
Yeah, and Michael, one of the things that I think's been obviously apart from the Burton game, because we didn't actually take the lead in that one. But, you look at the Wigan game, the MK Dons game, the game yesterday, Johnson seems to kind of like introduce Bailey Wright late into a game. And I'd imagine it won't just be Bailey Wright this season. Obviously, Alves was on the bench as well. Could be him in a few games' time. But he does, with that 1-goal lead that we have, he does have a tendency to, take off one of our more attacking players. I think it might have been Wimbledon yesterday who came off for Bailey Wright.
Yeah.
Which, like I say, it's easy to say now because it's working. But, if you bring Bailey Wright on in say, the 75th minute, they go and get an equaliser, you've got one less attacker on the pitch now and you've got one more defender on the pitch. It does kind of bring more pressure onto the side.
Yeah, well, that's something I've noticed in... Obviously, I didn't watch the whole of the Burton game, but if you look at the other ones, Wigan, MK Dons, and Wimbledon, every single one of those games we win by 1 goal. And I remember against Wigan, he definitely used the tactic of bringing Bailey Wright on. I don't remember if he did against MK Dons, but he probably would have brought on a more defensive player. And obviously, against Wimbledon, he did exactly that. So it's it's a risky business when you're sitting back on a 1-0 lead, and we've seen this so many times. It seems like every time we go 1 goal ahead, we always have to have a period where we really sit back. And I'm not going to be naive here. There are going to be periods where the other team is going to come at us. They're going to have to, because they're not just going to take it and roll over. But if you keep I do agree with you. I do agree with your point, though, that it's working now at the minute because we're winning games. But I just think that there's times when we're ahead by 1 goal. I would like to see us push for another one. Even MK Dons as an example, when they scored, I would have liked to have seen us push forward a bit more. But you could obviously attribute to Corey Evans going down injured in that game as a factor in why we sat back, because we lost that composure and control in midfield. As for the Wimbledon game itself, yesterday we got away with it because I felt that Wimbledon, with all due respect to them, I did not think were very good at all. They frustrated us to a degree, but I felt it was more down to Sunderland not going up the extra gear we could have done. So we got away with it there, but I think the performances definitely do need to improve, and we need to. I think Johnson needs to be a bit less conservative on a 1-0 lead, because we've seen that. How many times have we seen this in League One? Sit on a 1-goal lead, doesn't work. We concede, and then we're like, oh crumbs, what do we do here?
Yeah. And Kyle, it does, like I say, we're winning games, so at the end of the day, it doesn't matter at the moment. But he is, in a way, opening himself up to criticism a little bit, Lee Johnson, if that does go wrong, because it is a very bold decision to do it with like 10, 15 minutes left of game when you're 1-0 up. Especially yesterday, because I feel like after the Burton game, there was a lot more pressure on us to actually win the game yesterday. So it does kind of open him up that little bit more to, I suppose, directed criticism if it doesn't pay off.
Right. And I think we are at the point in the season where we can try these types of things a little bit more willingly, I guess, especially with a side that we have the signings in now. Like we're probably about, I would say, 90% to like what our squad should look like in terms of numbers and positions and things like that. So I guess if there's any point in the season where it's like, hey, well, we have 1-0 lead at home. It's very early doors in the season. Let's try this. If it doesn't work, sure, he's going to get that criticism. He's the head coach of Sunderland. He's open to criticism regardless of what he does. So I don't really mind it too much, especially because it pays off. It's easier for me to say that now. And it's also interesting too with the types of personnel that he has on the field. With Carl Winchester, with Dan Neil, and playing a little bit out of position, it does allow him to kind of change things up a little bit late and bring on a more defensive player, because those two players are, I would say, a little bit more attacking minded anyways. So it's kind of a weird balance that we have at the moment. But I think once we have a fully settled side with, we'll get onto it with Winchester probably at, maybe at right back, maybe back in midfield. Dan Neil, I still think needs to be midfield. So when we have, I think, our fully settled side, I think we'll probably see less of that. I think it'll be more of a straightforward approach, but it's paying off now. Sure, there's criticism there, but hey, until it bites you, hopefully sooner rather than later, so we can learn from it, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. We'll look at the team that started the game for Sunderland, and there was a late change to the starting 11. And I did kind of notice it at the time. I don't know if you saw it as well, Michael, but they were warming up. And probably for the first time I think I've ever seen it, Lee Johnson came out about 15 minutes before kick-off. I think it was David Priest who was doing the kind of the shooting drill. He went over to him and he said something, and I immediately thought something's going to change. I wasn't sure what. But ultimately, it was a change in goal. So Lee Burge drop out of the starting 11 because of an injury, although he named on the bench. So I'm not too sure what I think on that one. But Winchester at right back, Flanagan, Doyle, and Dan Neil back at left back. Serkin was on the bench. Elliot Embleton, Luke O'Nien, and Alex Pritchard for what I think is his full league debut. Aidan McGeady, Lyndon Gooch, and Ross Stewart. And like I say, Kyle, it was a little bit of a surprise to see him move Dan Neil back into left back after how well he'd played in midfield in the previous 2 games.
It was, I was a little skeptical at first, but after reading some of the comments from Johnson and just kind of Dan Neil's attitude, and really after seeing him now both a full game in midfield, full game at left back, left back. He can just kind of almost do it all. It's almost like the same thing that we thought about Luke O'Nien as well, where I think it's now pretty clear that I do think Luke O'Nien is better at right back. But I mean, Dan Neal it's just a hell of a player to have, someone with that sort of tool set and the mentality to not be upset. Like, I'd rather be playing my preferred position. He just gets on with it. And, I think it's good to get those minutes under him now. We never know if hopefully we don't have to rely on him all season there, but we never know in a game if there's an injury or subs and we have to make adjustments and he's going to have to slot back in. It's good to get those minutes in him now, because if he has the utility to play just about anywhere on the field, I mean that makes him pretty much undroppable, I think.
Yeah. And obviously Cirkin on the bench, Michael. Obviously he joined. I think the week that he joined, I think he played like 60 or 70 minutes for Tottenham's under-23s. Obviously he caught COVID, and he's played. I think he's played, obviously apart from yesterday. I think he's played, and I think started in all of the games since he signed. So whilst to me it didn't make sense to put Neil at left back, it does make sense, to give Cirkin a rest, make sure that he doesn't pick up any needless injuries. Obviously so early into the season. But like I say, what do you think about the whole Dan Neil situation?
Well, I'm sure we'll get onto it later with the player ratings. I know I have a habit of leading on to points you're going to bring up later, but still, we'll bring it on later. I think Dan Neil was probably my pick of the players yesterday, and I think that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did he get moved to midfield once?
Second half, yeah.
Came on? I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he did. His attitude's unquestionable. I mean, there's been I've had a couple of mates of mine who've been a big advocate of Dan Neil, who wanted to see him get involved more. And when I watched him yesterday, I think at left back he was more assured, but that was probably also down to the fact that, for me, Wimbledon are the weakest team we've played so far, and he didn't have as much to deal with. However, he can't.
Yeah.
You can only deal with what's in front of you. And I thought Dan Neil did fairly well. He was composed on the ball. Positionally at left back, he was better. Again, despite the lack of having anything to do. But when he moved into midfield, I thought he looked good. I thought he looked good against Burton. So there's definitely a player there. And for once, we've actually got hopefully the right management and head coach system to unleash some of these players and actually see what they're all about. Because we know what Parkinson in particular was like with the idea of using any youngsters. He was very youngster averse, I suppose, if that's the right phrase.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you do, but as I do when you're watching the game, I think the first half, to put it straight, was pretty shit.
Crap,
I don't think there's like really any other way to put it. So, as I do, I kind of think like, well, how am I going to talk about this in a podcast? And there was a lot of negativity, and I'm thinking I don't really want to do this podcast. The second half changed a little bit, but obviously we'll get onto that shortly. But just looking on the first half, Kyle, it was just so unlike the team that we saw in pre-season. We've seen in the opening 3 games. There were simple passes getting overhit or just like 5-10 yards further forward than where they needed to be. There was just a lot of, I don't know what the word is here, just confusion. We'll go with that.
Really, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah. I think it was a great reminder of it being in League One and the types of teams that, when you go out on the road, it's a little bit different because whoever the home team is, whether it's Wimbledon, Burton, whoever, they're always going to try to put on a show for their home fans. They're going to go for it. But my God, when some of these teams visit the Stadium of Light, they have absolutely zero intention of doing anything that even like remotely resembles like a modern game of football. It's just completely pack everything back. Everything is super, super pressed. Like once we get into their attacking half. So it does make it extremely difficult. But most of these players have I guess we do have a lot of new players, but Johnson has to be the one to kind of remind these players, when we play at home, this is what it's going to be. So we have to be a little bit more patient, and we have to be more decisive if we get any opportunities, because they're going to try to suffocate any chances we have. So it was just a great reminder. I was like, oh yeah, this is the League One that we just love so much. It's different. And it'll be totally different next weekend, and I'm sure we'll get to Wickham a little bit because I believe that's next weekend. Totally different there. But a team like Wimbledon, they come and they have one goal in mind in that first half, and it's just to essentially just make the game almost unplayable, unwatchable, to kind of level the playing ground a little bit. So that was just a nice reminder that here we are in League One.
One of my friends actually said, I think after the game, that was it was just a typical League One game, and I think that just sums it up perfectly.
Yep.
It was just, it was a strange one though, wasn't it? Because, Elliot Embleton, we've praised him so much. You've got Aidan McGeady, who again we'll get on to later on, because I think that is quite a worthy talking point at the moment. Alex Pritchard, who's looked bright when he came on. They just were almost clueless as to what the teammate would be doing. I think there was a couple of times Pritchard played the ball into McGeady. McGeady wanted it into his feet, but Pritchard played it into his stride. Went out to play for Wimbledon throw, and they just gave us it straight back because again, they just weren't all that. And I think 1-0. Although I think Wimbledon fans would probably argue otherwise, I think 1-0 probably flattered them because like you said, Michael, they did nothing in the game. I don't think Patterson had to make a save. I think the only one I recall him having to make was, in like the 80th or 90th minute where it was, a simple header in each quarter, went to ground, waste a bit of time as you do. But the second half was a lot better. The passing was a lot cleaner, a lot crisper, removed the ball a lot quicker. Players were linking up, which they just weren't in the first half. Like I said, Pritchard and McGeady just weren't on the same wavelength. Second half they were. I think Dan Neil saw a lot more of the ball in the second half, used it well, played it well. And if they played in the second half if they played in the first half like they did in the second half, it could have probably easily been 3 or 4-0, Kyle.
No, I definitely agree. And the one thing I at least did like seeing was that we were able to go in there at the half after a very poor first half and come out looking like a totally different team. There's better mentality, better intensity, and that shows that the players really do, respect Lee Johnson. From what I can tell, it could be a different story, but it does appear that way. That he's able to go in there, deliver a strong message of saying, this is what they're doing. This is what, as Sunderland, we have to do. We have 30,000 fans that will get on edge very quickly if we don't turn some things around. And it was at least very nice to see from the first whistle of the second half. Just we brought it right to them, and we were decidedly the better team in that second half. There's no question about it.
Yeah. We'll move on to goal because ultimately that's the reason we're talking about a win. Winchester, he was getting quite high up the pitch, seeing a lot of the ball. The balls came out on him on the edge of the box. Everyone shout, shoot. That's exactly what he's done. Took a deflection, into the bottom corner. And I think I was watching couldn't for the life of you tell you what he's called, but one of the Wimbledon players was talking after the game. And apparently that's how I think they've lost or drew their last 2 or 3 games because of a deflected goal, Michael. So it shows that, Wimbledon realistically aren't a bad team. As I mentioned at the start, I think it was 11 games unbeaten going into this game. So the fact that we did completely nullify them, saw most of the ball, and we're coming away with a 1-0 win, quite disappointed really in the scoreline. It is in a way promising.
It is. I do. I mean, don't get me wrong. With respect towards Wimbledon, I still believe in the game they didn't do that much, but you could say that was us nullifying them second half. I think the only chance I remember them really having was in the first 10-15 minutes when, I can't remember who it was for them, but someone had a shot just outside the 6-yard box, and it just literally rolled past the right post. But that aside, Sunderland did obviously have, despite how poor I felt we were, we did have more of the chances. But Wimbledon, to be fair, like you said, they're 11 games unbeaten. Start of this season, going into the game against us, they were unbeaten. And to be fair to them, I did actually watch. I think I watched the Quest highlights, and I saw the goal that Gillingham scored against them in midweek. Which, that was very unfortunate. It was probably similar style to what the goal was yesterday, where it was a deflection that took it into the far corner of the goal. So they should have had a win against Gillingham. Obviously, against Bolton, I think they were 3-1 down and came back to get a 3-3 draw. Beat Donny 2-1 on the opening day of the season. So look, they score goals, but they've conceded quite a few of them as well. So I still felt I do still feel we could have done more of them. But at the end of the day, it is a side who was unbeaten. So to be positive, it was a side who hadn't lost before this season before the game against us, and we've ended up ending that run. So while it wasn't the best performance from us, you definitely take that as a positive. And as you said, Wimbledon are not a bad side. Bear in mind they've lost Joe Piggott as well, who was their top goal scorer probably for certainly last season, probably for the last few seasons. So to be fair, they seem to have players who are stepping up in place of him. Either way, it was a big win for us.
Lost George Jobson as well.
Yeah. George Jobson, remember when we played Charlton, he'll be playing against us and probably have to give his life more than
I know.
It'll be inevitable goal there, won't there?
Yeah, much.
One thing I want to mention that I did say, Kyle, obviously Aidan McGeady started the game again. And we said after the Burton game, is this the right time to possibly drop them? Use them from the bench, utilise them against, tired legs. We didn't. we stuck with him in the starting 11. And he kind of backed up our point of why that might be a good decision, because I think that's possibly the worst game I think I've seen him play for us.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Nothing came off for him. And he's missing that quick twitch. And, it's really easy to be critical as, a 29-year-old man in the middle of the United States to sit on my couch and criticize the way somebody plays. But it just nothing was coming off for him yesterday. I mean, everything he tried, his same moves that we've seen, it's just very careless with possession in the middle. And it was a little frustrating to watch, because we know the ability. That's why we have him on here. That's why we've kept him around. But we know the ability, and and he didn't have much of a preseason. So maybe that's what it is. We're about 4 games. He would have had roughly about 3 or 4 games really in the preseason to kind of get things going. And, maybe we can still get back to that point. But I think if we were unsure of whether or not we should maybe look at a change there, I think after yesterday's performance, Johnson's really going to have to consider things. And it's going to be a rough one to manage for sure. And that's why Johnson's the manager, though. He's going to have to figure this out. But I think anyone who watched that game knows that's not the best option for us right now. Whether that means we need to change formations or just put a different player in there to fit, what skill set we have on the bench maybe, but we have to have something a little different. And I think that and we'll get to it as well, Gooch is, I think, in the same boat as well. We need to have somebody else in there, give them a chance to also put pressure on Gooch and McGeady to say, hey, you guys haven't played up to where we expect. We're going to put somebody else in to see if they can take advantage of it and maybe put a little bit more pressure, maybe reignite that fire under Gooch and McGeady again to kind of get back to just playing solid. We're not even asking them to play incredible. Just do your part a little bit, and I think McGeady was way off that yesterday.
Yeah, and I think I was listening, I think it was BBC Newcastle after the game, Michael, because I don't know if you know, but obviously parking inside the stadium, getting out is an absolute nightmare. So you do kind of sit around for a while. So
like that.
BBC Newcastle.
You don't get out the ground till like an hour after the game at least.
Yeah, I think it's about 30, 40 minutes sometimes till they open the barriers, and then it's just a free fall to who can get out first. So it's quite a fun one if you do like the bit of road rage. But I took BBC Newcastle on. I'm not sure who it was, but someone called in and they gave the best analogy of Lyndon Gooch I think anyone could possibly give, and it was the fact that he's the only man that can find a dead end when there isn't one. And I think that is just the perfect way of describing Lyndon Gooch at the moment, Michael.
You've put the pressure on me to try and follow up that analogy when that just describes it in the best way possible in about 5 seconds. Well, to quickly touch on what you were talking about, McGeady, the point I'll make on it is, the way I look at it is that I think the reason McGeady isn't looking as good is because we're not solely relying on him to bail us out the shit, quite frankly. Like the last few seasons, it's literally been Pastor McGeady, hope he crosses the ball, hope for the best. And last season, it worked to a T with Wyke. But as for Gooch, I mean, I'm trying not to bang on the old drum because I've said this pretty much ever since we've dropped into League One. Gooch's work rate, I can't fault. I definitely think you can see when he plays how much it means to him, and I think that's a handy attribute to have around the squad. I think that he's a handy squad player in my opinion, but for him to be starting regularly, his decision making is the thing I criticise him the most, because it's one that I think it's very valid. I mean, there was one occasion, there was at least 2 occasions I remember yesterday where his decision making let us down. The first one was when he was having the ball on the right hand side going into the penalty box, and Carl Winchester was on the overlap in space, onside I think, but he was still in space, and he could have passed to him. We could have created a better chance. And Gooch tried to do his obligatory 7,000 step overs like he's Messi and Ronaldo of League One, end up losing the ball. And then the second time was when he actually did manage to beat someone with a step over, and I think it was when he had a really good chance to shoot for the keeper when the goal was basically gaping for him, but he took an extra touch, and that took the momentum out of the attack. And I do agree with what Kyle said, and I think you probably will have alluded to yourself as well if you talk about it, that these guys need pressure putting on them, because one of the biggest reasons I've said why Sunderland have fallen apart and underachieved so much is the lack of standards. And I'm not saying the players don't try, but I mean, put more pressure on them and say, look, if you're not playing to your 100% your capability, there's someone who's perfectly capable to take your spot. And that instantly increases competition, it increases quality options, and it probably will confuse the opposition more. But yeah.
Right.
The thing is on that, and I'll stop you there, is the competition though. if
Well,
Gooch
that's
isn't
what
playing
at the
well,
minute.
if McGeady isn't playing well, is there
At
any
the minute,
competition for
no.
him?
At the minute, there isn't, and that's down to the recruitment team to get that. It's down to the recruitment team to get, because there's been talks of Jack Diamond going out on loan. I don't personally think Jack Diamond's the answer. Benji Kimpioka, I definitely think Benji Kimpioka isn't the answer. So we need to get at least one more winger, possibly another two. Broadhead, I don't know whether Broadhead's going to be viewed as a winger who can play as a striker, which is something that does kind of annoy me, that Sunderland seem to have this idea of, oh, well, we've got a player who can cover 2 or 3 positions, so he's going to be the only cover we've got for those positions. So Broadhead can play striker. Oh, that's okay, he's cover there, but he's also cover for the wings as well. No, go out and get a player who's a specialist in that position, please, because we know what our looks like with injuries. So, deal with it now while we're on, I mean, I've said that with the transfer, I'm hoping Sunderland, I mean, this is Sunderland we're talking about, but I'm hoping that they're not stupid enough to think, well, okay, this is good enough. We want to get better. And I've said that throughout August, we have to try and make do with what we've got. But with that, then comes the expectation of getting the players that you should be getting before the end of the window. Because how long have we got left of the window? Is it like 10, 11 days or something?
10 days, I think it is, at the time.
Actually, hang on. What date is it today? So 26. Well, 9 days. Is it the 31st it closes? Or is it September early?
I mean, I think I saw 10 days somewhere, but that could have been a couple of days old tweet. But
well, okay, so we'll say a week to a week
let's
and a
just say
half.
over a week.
Yeah, we'll say a week to a week and a half then. So either way, but I do agree. Back to your original point, yeah, I do agree. I think at the minute there isn't sufficient competition for those two, and the sooner we get them in, the better, because it will end up raising hopefully it'll raise Gooch and McGeady's game, and it'll add other quality options as well.
Yeah. And just on the kind of transfers at the moment, Kyle, obviously Niall Huggins came in.
Yep.
I think he's played predominantly as a left back at under 23 level for Leeds. Obviously, we've brought in Sirkin. So again, going back to what Michael's literally just said, whilst he can play left back, I think he has been brought in as a right back. So it kind of does imply that we do need possibly one more each fullback. Obviously, if Sirkin gets injured, I don't really want to be watching Dan Neil at left back, because I think defensively he's not great. We'll get on the ratings, but defensively he's not great. And when you put him in midfield, he can change the game, and I think he did that yesterday. Again, right back, if Huggins gets injured, Winchester can play there. He's looked very comfortable there. But again, I think he's kind of wasted at right back. I want to see him in midfield. We do still need, regardless of what people think, maybe 4 or 5 new players. Obviously, there's talk about a goalkeeper coming in if Patterson can kind of keep the form up that he had yesterday. I know he didn't have too many saves to make, but he looked confident coming out. His distribution was good. And obviously, he was thrown in last second as well. I'd imagine he didn't think he was starting up until about 2:45. So that won't have helped. But you've got Broadhead, who I think's been predominantly brought in as a striker. Greg was at Nando's yesterday. I don't know what the future holds for him. We've mentioned the winger situation. There is still a lot of incomings to add to the team.
Yeah, and I think most transfer windows too, especially with how the last season has been with COVID and the financial situation for a lot of clubs, I expected a lot of deals to be done toward the end, right? Because there's some teams that are going to be desperate, and then there's some teams who know, okay, if I just hold on to this player, I might get a little bit more if we wait till kind of the dying stages of transfer window to get an extra, because especially in this league, an extra 100,000, 200,000 for a player might not be much to us at this point. Still a decent amount of money, don't get me wrong, but for other teams, it's kind of a make or break for them, for other clubs with their financial situation. So I kind of expected it to get to this point. I think I also read somewhere, and I might have read the quote wrong, that Benji Kimpioka has been being worked as left and right back right now. I could be making this up, but I think I did see that.
I really hope not, but that would not shock me.
Right. So just even bringing that up, I was like, oh gosh, like we got some work to do. But no, it's I like the players that we brought in. I think versus the League One plotters, the ones that are like, well, your ceiling is League One. I think the players that we brought in are for that bigger picture, saying, well, if we do go up, these players still have the potential to grow and could be, higher level players, whether that means we play them, we sell them, whatever. So I really do like the recruitment that we've done so far. There's more to be done, but like I said, I expected it to get pretty late in dicing the transfer window, and who doesn't love a little bit of drama, transfer window drama. So deadline day.
I don't know. I think I'd like a bit of stability. That'd be all right.
Yeah, I guess.
Just for once. But it did finish 1-0, obviously, Michael. I think the last thing I want to mention as well, which I think we've done quite well, to be fair, on this, because I don't think we've actually
Haven't we
mentioned
dragged
it.
something like over half an hour talking about what essentially was a dead rubber game for half of it?
Yeah.
We have. But the last thing about the game that is worth just, I suppose, ranting about, because we haven't mentioned it in any of the first 3 games, which is impressive. But Jesus, the refereeing was shocking yesterday.
Right, I know you're
Some of the
trying
decisions.
to...
I mean, the one that got to me the most was the throw in. Obviously, it came at nothing, so it doesn't really matter. But it was clear as day that it was a Sunderland throw. The ball quite clearly changed direction. He's given it the other way, which was baffling, but fine. But he went 20 yards up the pitch with the throw.
I know you're trying to keep this podcast short, so I won't go. I'll try not to go on too much about it. But my God, the referees, to put it bluntly, are pants. I just don't get how officials can be so bad. And to be fair, there was a couple of times. I think there was one occasion where I thought Wimbledon would have had a stonewall free kick, and play ended up going on in our favour. So I don't know if I remembered that wrong, but it's not just yesterday. It's crossed this whole god awful league where the referees are synonymous with. I think that I can't decide what's worse: the quality of the football or the actual officials themselves.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to determine it, but the referees, I've tended to notice, and maybe I'm being a conspiracy theorist here in saying this, but every time I see a referee come up the stadium light, they seem determined to make the show about themselves, and I just don't get it. I think some of the officials can't handle refereeing up here, or maybe it's like, well, we don't want to be coming off biased in front of 30,000 fans, so let's just give everything against Sunderland. So, I'm not to dispute how difficult a job refereeing is. I definitely couldn't have the balls to do it, and I do understand that in front of a crowd like ours, it's going to be overbearing at times. But my goodness me, if you can't make a basic decision, then just get out. Just get out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there was rumours that apparently some of the referees in this league got only part-time jobs in addition to referees. Now that's something that the EFL. In which case, these officials are putting under pressure, and they're putting their names under pressure because the EFL or the FA are too incompetent or just don't give enough of a shit about Leagues 1 and 2 to employ full-time officials. Because in which case, either way, it needs to be sorted.
Yeah. And I do think we've done well not to mention that yet in 4 podcasts.
I think that's going to be the first of many this season, unfortunately. We're going to mention it. I'd be very surprised if we don't mention the referees at least a dozen podcasts a season.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on to player ratings. We'll do it differently, like we said at the start. But I'll take the first one. I'll go with Anthony Patterson, who, like I say, came in last minute. And I generally can't remember him having to make a challenge and save. Like I said, there was the one at the end where he's just kind of caught the ball, took it to the floor. But distribution was good. A couple of crosses he came out for and collected well. I think there was one in the second half where he came for and never got there. Was cleared off the line. But ultimately, for being thrown in there last minute, his league debut, I went with a 7 out of 10 for Patterson. And Kyle, you can take Winchester.
For me, he's player of the match. Everything he did, and I'm sorry for spoilers there, but everything he did, he just played with energy and passion, and just looked quicker too. I remember last year, like he was a little bit of a bigger kid, it looks like, but man, he was just out there really making some excellent runs. All of his passes, he had nice little touches, like kind of through his legs and behind and step overs. Like he just looked like he was really, really enjoying it. And I guess this really was his second game in front of the fans and things like that, and especially scoring a goal in front of 30,000. And Johnson had a great interview after the fact, that talking just kind of about his character and how much he thinks of Winchester. It's just a shame I think he's 28, right? It's just a shame, because I do think that this is probably his ceiling. Maybe we could bring him up if we go up, but I loved everything he did yesterday. It just seems like everybody else really rallies around him as well. He's a great leader, great character, great name too. A name like Winchester to be taking shots from 30 yards out. I think it's just awesome. And I think the goal, with a bit of luck, it came because of his work rate. He was just up and down the field. Even toward the end of the game too, he had that one really long run down and almost kind of broke away there. It's just it was just fun to watch. And I've said it a few times with other player ratings, he embodied what the home fans want to see. And it's just somebody who just works their ass off and just makes the right decisions, goes in for a crunching tackle, and then gets up and makes a 40-yard run downfield. I think he was, I would almost, God, I'll just say I'd give him a 9. I think everything he did yesterday, for his position to be technically out of position, play that well, and link up play like he did, make the runs that he did, and then score, I think a 9 is well warranted.
Yeah. Tom Flanagan, Michael.
Oh, my biggest fan. Yeah, to be fair, right? If I'm joking aside, Tom Flanagan's actually been pretty good this season. I'm one of his bigger critics, but yesterday I felt that he continues to impress me. That he's commanding a back line, which essentially is, well, obviously Winchester's not a right back, but I'd imagine when we do get a right back, it'll probably be full of kids, basically. Or he'll certainly be the oldest among the back line, and he's linked up quite well with Callum Doyle. He's got his body on the line. He's positionally been quite a bit better than what I've seen him be so far. So I would say a good steady 7. I think he was solid, but not spectacular. But that's what I want. I want my centre backs to have that sort of game, not have as much to do.
Yeah. Callum Doyle, I'll go with this one. I went with the 7. I thought in the first half, kind of like everyone was. I don't think he was particularly up to standard as what he kind of set himself in the first couple of games. I think he made one long ball. And then, I think Wimbledon kind of figured it out in the first half. But second half, he changed up a little bit. I think there was one outside the foot pass he made down to the wing, which was excellent to watch. His passing was great. Defensively was sound. So I went with a 7 for Doyle. Dan Neil, Kyle.
Well, we judged him as as left back, or we judged him as midfield, right? Because he played a little bit of both yesterday.
But it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because he started left back and then moved into midfield.
Regardless of where he was, he played great. He played very well, and I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. His defensive, he's a little bit lacking on the defensive side, but what he does do extremely well, because he's not huge and physical and things like that, but he's able to get himself between the man and the ball very quickly. As soon as that player gives a little bit, a yard of extra space on that ball on that first touch, he's able to just get right in front of it, shield it out, and he's pretty strong for the way he plays. He looks way more fleet of foot, maybe a little bit lighter on the weight side, but no, I think he held up his own just fine, and he's quick enough to recover, which helps out a lot. And I think, and you see it with some of the passes that he does from the midfield, he just has a very good understanding of the game, very good game knowledge. He's always kind of aware of what's going on. And that helps a lot when it comes to making up for physical deficiencies. It's just knowing kind of 1 or 2 steps ahead, where to position himself, where to intercept the pass, where to play a ball out. So I think that's his best asset. And regardless whether he's midfield or left back, I think 7 all around, and possibly even an 8 if a few other things went his way. But yeah, I think extremely solid. He's been so far, I think, the most fun to watch this season.
Yeah. Embleton, Michael.
And not one of his better games, but I think it's kind of similar to what you alluded to with Doyle, that I think it's because of the standard he set himself in earlier games that he hasn't been quite as good. There was a couple of times he tried to spray the ball, spray the ball across the pitch, like towards the wingers, and it just didn't quite come off for him. I remember, I think there was one occasion when he tried to spray the ball towards Gooch, and Gooch didn't get to it, and Embleton lost his shit, which I thought was quite amusing to some extent. But it just shows the standards that he expects. He's obviously always going to be a threat from set pieces. But as far as yesterday was concerned, I'd probably go with a 6. But that's obviously not a slight on Embleton, because in previous games, I think he stood out really well.
Yeah, I think I went with a 6 in the match report as well.
But that's the return of the 6s club, isn't it?
Yes. I don't think there's too many in this game, for better or for worse. But 9, I will take again. And first half, again, everyone was just poor. I think, out the first half, Flanagan, Winchester, and I wouldn't even say Patterson, because he had nothing to really do. But I'd say Flanagan and Winchester were the only ones for me that took any credit out of the first half. I thought O'Nien was very sloppy in possession. There was a couple of 50-50s that he lost. His passing was off. Second half was much improved. His passing was neater, sharper. Made some important blocks, important tackles, and then obviously I think he dislocated his shoulder, got put back in, and came back on. But based on the whole 90 minutes, I went with a 6. Again, similar to Wimbledon, just capable of more than he showed yesterday, especially in the earlier stages of the game. But Lyndon Gooch for you, Kyle.
Oh yes, my
I'm
fellow
so glad
American.
I'm not taking
the American. I didn't plan this, but this is how it's landed.
Right, yeah, and we've seen better days from Lyndon Gooch. And I think we all know that. And he obviously knows that as well. He is a player. I'm sure he's his own worst critic, just like Gidi is as well, which we'll get to. But yeah, it was probably this is probably some of the worst form I think we've seen him in. But like we've mentioned, like you can't fault his work rate. I mean, he's always just busting, up and down the field, trying to get into tackles. He gets a little fiery, and I think we saw that a little bit. He got a little fiery too early again, and that kind of just took him out. And I think what the problem is since he's been with us for so long and kind of always played in that same role, the other teams have plenty of film, so to speak, on what his game is. They know exactly what his game is. He has a few tools that he can, kind of use at his disposal, and the teams know every single one of them. So it's going to be on him to break that mold a little bit, to find a different style of play, find a different way to make an impact if his play just isn't working. So whether that's, tracking back more or just being more of a facilitator. And I think he's stuck in that mindset where it's like, well, do I want to be the attacking threat here or do I want to facilitate? And then he's caught in between and it results in extra touches or hesitating on putting a ball into the box. And I think that's where we're at with Lyndon Gooch. I think it's a 4, and I think that's pretty deserved from the body of work. If I were to be nice, I'd say his work rate probably earned a 5, but I think he would probably give himself
Yeah. Alex Pritchard for you, Michael.
I think I could definitely see I can definitely see the quality in him and why we brought him in. Out of all the signings that we've made, I think he's the one that's excited me the most, provided we can. But of course, there's always the caveat of whether we can keep him fit or not. So based on yesterday, I would say probably a steady 6. I think bearing in mind that was his first start for us, and bear in mind I think I'd be adamant in saying that I think he's capable of better than that. But he was linking up with McGeady a few times. I think, as you said earlier, McGeady and Pritchard linked up well in the second half. Obviously, I won't touch on the first because nobody was good in the first half. But second, got us forward, facilitated some good runs, and just general was linking up play fairly well. And obviously was unlucky not to score himself when he had that chance when he ran almost through on goal and it just went past the post. So yeah. Oh, I'm going to be generous. I'll say 7 just to avoid saying 6 again more.
Yeah. Well, Aidan McGeady, I'll take again. I don't think anyone knows that I do like McGeady. I think he is one of our better players, if not our best player. But yesterday, there's no other way of putting it. He was shocking. His first touch let him down a lot. His decision making at times let him down. There was one good ball he put in the box where I think it was 09 and Gooch at the back post kind of tackled each other and ended up going wide. But outside of that, he just did nothing. His kind of signature move in League One has always been to square up to the defender, take that heavy touch, whip the ball in. And he tried that multiple times yesterday, but he was beaten to the ball on every single occasion. So I went with a 3 for McGeady, which is mad. I don't think I've ever given McGeady a rating lower than 6. But I just thought he was very poor yesterday. And I think he probably will be dropped on Tuesday for the cup game, and probably rightfully so. And obviously, depending how the likes of Broadhead, Hawks play if he's featuring, potentially even keep him on the bench for the Wycombe game on Saturday. But Kyle, you get the last one, which is Ross Stewart.
I think just another steady performance from Ross Stewart. I still think we haven't even seen the best of him yet, and I think he's played really well. What I really love that he does is he's able, especially Patterson. I think we touched on it a little bit. Patterson's delivery and distribution of the ball is fantastic. I think better than Burge, and Ross was able to find an open space, perfectly bring it down with a nice chest trap, and then play it into space to Pritchard and to Ambleton, which I think is his best asset. So I'd say solid 7. I think he did everything he could have scored. Obviously, that would be a little bit different, but I don't remember him getting a whole lot of chances. So
yeah, fair enough. Man of the match. I mean, Winchester. I think it's fairly straightforward for that one.
Yeah,
I'd have personally given it to Dan Neil, but I can't argue with Winchester.
Fair enough. Always like a bit of diversity, don't we? But next game is Blackpool in the Cup. Next league game is Wycombe. Predictions for Wednesday, isn't it? Or was it Tuesday?
Tuesday, I believe.
Tuesday. Predictions for Tuesday, Kyle. Blackpool away.
I just want to see some new player, right? Some of these new signings come in, get some minutes under their belt. I think that's really what we have to treat these cup games as. Is this the League Cup or is this the Pizza Cup? Do we know?
The League Cup.
I mean, it's like I said, all these games right now at this stage of the season are just good for extra minutes. So I want to see us win. Wouldn't be too bothered if we don't. I think Blackpool's still pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a defeat there, but as long as we see some new changes in there and play hard, it'll probably be like a 1-0 either way. So whether that's a win or a loss, so as long as it doesn't go to like PKs or something ridiculous.
Yeah. Michael.
I'm going to go with very outlandish. I actually think we'll beat Blackpool. I think Blackpool have got bigger fish to fry with the Championship. I know obviously we have getting out of League One, but I think both teams will feel like more reserve size. But I've just got a hunch we'll end up coming away victorious.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a preview out for that game. You'll be listening to this on Sunday night. I think it'll probably be Monday morning. A preview for that game will be out, which I'm recording in about 30 minutes' time. But that is all we have time for this podcast, and I appreciate you both coming on again. I appreciate the early morning from you, Kyle.
No problem.
Yeah, we said before coming on air, Kyle's dedication is just like
I don't know where I've gotten to this stage of my life, but it's.
Who would have thought you'd be getting up early on a Sunday morning talking about Sunderland against AFC Wimbledon?
I wouldn't, I'd rather be anywhere else. So there you go.
No, there you go then.
But like I said, preview will be out tomorrow. After that, we will have a reaction for the Wycombe game.
That's all, folks.